Well, hey, how are you? Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Ng. I'm an engineering manager here at AppNexus. First, welcome everyone who's joining us to this exciting TED Talk events that we have at AppNexus. So for some of you that are first time here and you don't know much about what we do, AppNexus technology powers some of the most innovative trading solutions and marketplaces for the advertising industry. Some of the most influential advertising and media companies choose to build their business on top of our platform as well. So for the TED Talk series this evening, our team is going to share with you recent projects that we worked on and how we achieve like putting advertising dollars in the hand of like high quality content providers so that our consumers can continue to enjoy high quality content for free. And then what we're going to do later is we're going to also show you some of the tech stack that we use. I'll let our Alex from product tell you more about that. And our engineering team, Yanyi, Max, and Alejandro, will get into different part of the stack. And then also some of the development best practice that we embrace. If you like what you hear tonight, check out the career website and also reach out to the tech talent acquisition group at the booth over there. Yeah. Come join us. And also one announcement is check out our next Tech Talk coming up. It's called Taming Big Data. It's coming up June 18th. Our data platform team is going to share with you how they use Hadoop in the past 4 years in production, and then we process 175 terabytes of data every day, and then they're going to share with you how they evaluate open source and commercial solutions to cut that footprint down. So check out that Tech Talk series as well coming up. All right, without further ado, I would like to introduce you awesome trader home.
Hey everybody, thanks Ben. My name is Alex and I'm a product manager here at AppNexus. Super excited to be here with my team tonight, the Trader Home team. They're all sitting over here. We actually have a remote team member in San Francisco that does UX design that's not talking tonight, but very much a part of the team. A Docs team member that I saw somewhere. We just had a new UI member join that's not going to be talking tonight, but it's an awesome team. Excited to be here with them. So Ben gave a little bit of overview about what AppNexus does, but I really, before we get started, I want you to have that context a little bit closer to home. So it's been a long day. It's 6:40. We're all tired, but I definitely, right? Super tired at 6:30. We're very old. Yeah, so let's get this party started the right way, the old-fashioned way, with a, this thing isn't on, with a, I can just do this. Old-fashioned, right? And this is broken. With a poll. It's how you get every party started from here on out. Cool. So, show of hands in the audience. Who, there we go. Cool, thank you. Who in here enjoys reading and watching great content for free online? Show of hands, please. Wow. You're just doing that, right? I was going to say anyone who didn't raise their hand either doesn't read or is paying for their content. So second question, who dislikes getting ads that they feel like are irrelevant to them? Wow. Less people than like reading for free. I expected more people disliking irrelevant advertising. This last one I think should be unanimous. It's a bad way to run a poll. Who wants publishers of great content to not only stay in business, but to thrive? Right? Right? Content? We love it? Cool. So at AppNexus, really, we all believe, and this is true, that advertising is the lifeblood of the internet that we know. It fuels all these things I was just talking about, like free content, basically commerce, being connected all the time, chatting, lots and lots and lots of news, and of course, cat videos, the entertainment that we can't live without. But seriously, we love our cat videos, right? So we come to work in the morning because we believe that advertising is the lifeblood of the internet, and we believe that our product really is the best suited to facilitate that great internet. Basically, what it does at a high level is really makes buying and selling advertising online more efficient and effective. It's that easy, right? So I started at AppNexus, this is me, in 2013, so 2 years ago. Actually started on the UX team. Now I'm a product manager, started on the UX team. We were a 5.5-year-old company at that time, and we had seen, as you can see, exponential growth during that first 5.5 years. And over that period of time, with exponential growth, we'd also built a ton of powerful features really rapidly. And our UI, this is not a picture of our UI, by the way. This is meant to represent a very complex workflow. But our UI is awesome, but it really was not optimized for any one segment of users. So we grew really huge, and different people want to use our platform in a different way, and it could be pretty complex in some ways. But the main idea is it really wasn't optimized for any one single set of users. So a little bit more about Console. It serves thousands of users a day across, and this is I would say tens, if not hundreds of thousands of hours a week. Some people use our tool 40 hours a day. And this is across hundreds of businesses, both really huge and really small and everywhere in between. And hundreds, well, if we're talking about Console, I'd say it's probably a little less than 100, around 100 UI engineers committed to the full-on stack of Console. So this is the point in the presentation that I get to brag a little bit about engineers and just with some stats on our platform. It's a very beautiful slide. So AppNexus listens to about 5 million queries per second. Just to put that in perspective, Twitter's somewhere around 300,000. I couldn't even make this small enough to really be the right scale, because then you couldn't read 300K. So yeah, pretty performant code. As Ben mentioned, we basically store, or we create 175 terabytes of data a day. It's not only is creative, but it has to be agged through to turn out in reporting to our clients. There's 2 million log level events ingested per second, and this is across 8,500 servers globally. So needless to say, it's a very impressive platform. But the reason that I bring this up is not only just to brag on our team of engineers, but to just give you an idea that anytime you start a project at AppNexus, you're dealing with a lot of complexity. So, which is actually really fun, but it's definitely true. Anytime we kick off a project, there's, no matter what it is, whether it's the UI or down lower in the stack, a lot of complexity. So let's get back to that map of users and our customers. So up until December of this past year, AppNexus operated as what we call a single business line company, which really just means we had one product that's serving all of our users, like I mentioned before. So this was true until December. And then in December, we started realizing that our products, there were several segments that we needed to be going after that our competitors go after, that really were businesses inside of the business. So we actually broke up into 4 companies within the company, or business units in lame business speak, to actually go after these segments of the advertising technology marketplace. And this is really where our story starts tonight. I know I laid a lot of groundwork and context of the company, but our story starts with the advertisers and agency business unit, which again just spun up beginning of the year, and a team within that business unit, or that company within the company, called Trader Home. Fine folks you see over here. So the Trader Home team started with a pretty simple problem that we'll dig into. But at a high level, our traders, or our main users, we call them traders, every day when they sit down at their desk, it takes them way too long to get to an actual value add activity. So they spend a lot of time doing stuff that really computers should be doing. And that's the problem that we set out to solve. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but first I want to introduce that user to you, the trader. So meet Laura. She's an actual real-life A&A trader. She in the audience? Word. I'm going to amalgamate Laura a little bit. Laura is great, excellent person who does an awesome job, and all of our traders that use our platform are. So I wanted to put a face, name to a face, and a user type. But just because you hear what I'm about to say doesn't mean it's necessarily always true for Laura. But you should definitely meet her and talk about some of this stuff afterwards. So traders like Laura, at a high level, just they're managing the execution of media buys, and that means stuff like layering on targeting to media buys, layering on data, and really at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is drive new insights, basically, for their clients, advertisers. So a trader who does a really successful job is able to come back to an advertiser and say, like, "Hey, did you know this about your audience?" It's what all marketers want to know. So traders are typically, and this is where Laura may give me a look, traders are typically very paranoid. In the world of real-time bidding, this online advertising that we've been talking about, you can blow tens of thousands of dollars in a matter of milliseconds. So traders are hyper-vigilant to make sure that they don't commit what we call a fat finger error. This is the fattest finger I could find on the internet. So like I said before, it takes traders a really long time to get to value-add activities after they sit down at their desk in the morning. And this really just means that at the end of the day, advertisers don't see the full benefit of using programmatic technology, which is a problem. So besides this paranoia factor, what else is really at the heart of this? What's going on? What's the problem here? So at AppNexus, we've created this, what we call the trader hierarchy of needs. And basically what this is telling you, stolen from our friend Maslow, that there are several things that a trader must do to achieve insights, like I talked about before. Obviously, they need to set up their objects in our system and not commit any fat finger mistakes. But the two things that I really want to focus on here are delivery and performance. So performance being return on investment for the advertiser. So with delivery, if you think about it, an agency is a lot like a government agency in some ways, in the sense that they're allotted a budget for a given period of time. If they don't spend the whole budget in that given period of time, they're not going to get that budget again. They may get less budget, they may get no budget at all. So delivery, actually, just as a baseline, is very, very important to the trader. In fact, this is that thing that can take a while in the morning to get past in order to get to value-add activities like focusing on performance. So I want to talk to you a little bit about why it takes so long to get to basically a state where you feel like, oh, I'm comfortable, I'm going to deliver this budget in full and not get it taken away from me. So, purposefully white here. This is where you listen to me. There's no one UI today to go to actually see, as an individual trader, the things that I care about, the things that matter to me, the things that I'm in charge of, with the right data. So basically, console, the UI I talked to you about before, is organized in a hierarchy. There's index pages with very powerful but list of every object that you own. And as an individual trader, I may not care about most of those. The other unfortunate thing is a lot of time the data that a trader is being judged on isn't actually in our UI because some outside reporting system is basically looking at a top line of how much did you actually spend according to my numbers. So we're dealing with this UI that doesn't show me the things that I want to see and numbers that are coming from another platform, as well as just general problem of I need to know if I'm going to deliver in full. So really quickly, and then we'll dive into the part that you're here for, the engineers on our team. This is a tech talk after all. Just want to show you what this problem looks like. This actually isn't taken from Laura, but another real life trader. These are real life screenshots. You can see it's 9:42 a.m. up here, and I've received an email with some reporting data. I'm going to do some Excel magic. I really love this one, input data here. More Excel magic, and a full 2 hours later, we've gotten to a point where I'm okay and comfortable knowing that I'm going to deliver my budget in full. Now I can focus on performance and really like driving insights for my client. So our team set out to eliminate this, and they're going to talk to you about how we did it, the technology behind it, and then we'll do a demo at the end. So I'm going to pass it to Yin Yi. She's AppNexus's Poet Laureate. I just crowned her that. She's also star of the Life of AppNexus video. So without further ado, Yin Yi.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Nice music. Oh, hey. How's everyone feeling? Is it good? Like BurnKit 2600 was really speaking to me today. I was kind of jamming and I was like, this could be a club. We're in a club right now. And that's a technology club. So, hi, I'm Yin Yi. I'm an engineer on the Trader Home team. And my part of the presentation is going to be about translating business needs into architectural solutions. So let's go back to this diagram of us as one big happy family, which was really great. We got really big though. And one of the really awesome things about this turning into this is kind of, oh, okay. I thought it like blinked out. Okay. Is kind of like how incredible it is that we not only have many opportunities as a company business-wise, but those opportunities are so big that we had to break up into a bunch of tiny other companies in order to really focus on those opportunities, tackle them as quickly as possible, and do that really, really well. So that's kind of where I want to start today. Usually what that sounds like is that we got a breakup really sounds bad, right? Usually you think about this. And what is the theme song to Dawson's Creek again? I was going to sing it, but I've forgotten. Thank you. But breaking up actually wasn't really that bad for us because it was really more of an opportunity. So instead of a Dawson's Creek breakup, it's a little more like this, Pangea breakup. I really love this GIF. It was an opportunity for us basically to reorient the company to be even more successful, to do the things that we needed to do. So when on the business end something changes, what are we going to do with the technology? We change the technology too. And here is what our user interface infrastructure looked like. Such PHP, very MVC, much unified. Also known as, we were using a unified PHP framework called Zend. And if Trader Home had been built as another part of console, we would have just been another page here, which is cool and all, but we wanted to do something a little more like this. Let's break up. Let's basically imagine going to a website and every single page on that website being like from a different server and with its own tech stack and just independent woman, I don't need no man. So that's what we aim to do. Well, now that this has turned into a talk about liberation and not technology, okay, that wasn't planned. Now I'm just laughing. Okay, recollecting myself, like data. So we wanted to do this, but we wanted to do it in a responsible way, which means, okay, in my heart of hearts, or in our heart of hearts, I don't speak for everyone, we're an enterprise company, and that means we have a really large audience of people who are following our every move in a good way because they like us, they trust our product, and they think we're stable, and they want to stay with us. But stability, as we all know, has some issues, such as we have a large audience. That means if you break something, I didn't think of a rhyme for this. If you break something, then you break something, and someone else is going to lose a lot of a lot of money. As Max is going to say later, or buckets full of time-sensitive money is something that we care about. People are going to lose money, and if you're an enterprise app and you're kind of unified, you're going to be probably slower to adopt new technology just because you introduce something new, it's more likely that something's going to break. But slower here is actually kind of relative. We were definitely still adopting new technologies with the older tech stack, but it's definitely relative to a startup that has kind of a clean slate, not as fast as that. And because of that, we were less able to pivot and do kind of the agile things that you would expect at a technology club. So if we went directly to startup, that means that we got a new tech. We can do whatever we want to do. We can Google it and then we can use it. And we have a small initial audience, so if we break something, only like 3 people are going to know, which means that we can pivot quickly and release quickly. But doing things fast is also not great. Sometimes you don't get any audience because your product is not actually stable enough for anyone to cling on to the like breezing by boat. And I was going to do a survey about this. Who here has ever built something that was kind of a proof of concept, but then saw that go directly to production, just like raise the roof? Some people raise the roof in that situation. And when you build a proof of concept, sometimes you don't really build tests, which makes it hard for you to have a safety net with your product. So no tests, no fun, many bugs. So what we really wanted to do was a balancing act. How are we going to get the best of the enterprise part and not fall into the trap of doing things rapidly? Well, so yeah, maximizing app stability, but enabling independence. It's like a really good relationship, actually. And unifying the user experience in a way so that when you go to console.appnexus.com and all of these pages are coming from different places, you don't think that you are. So how did we solve that? Well, okay, now I'm just thinking about cookies. Why did I put cookies on this? Okay, I remember now. So what did we decide to do? We basically re-architected and thought about our ecosystem in a different way. Microservices. When you hear that, you think probably like APIs, which is true for some of the things that we ended up building, some nice RESTful APIs, which I'll talk about later. But we also, that the basic idea is just having a standard interface that is easy to test in an automated way, that doesn't really, like, it's like a cookie cutter. It doesn't get in the way of whatever you put in your cookie, as long as the cookie is cookie shaped. That's the first cookie metaphor of the night. So the balance, that particular thing of doing the microservices enabled us to have more app stability and more app independence. But what about this last thing, unifying the user experience so that when you go to, well, it's like going to apple.com and then hitting the store, but the store being like Etsy. And then when you try to go to like another part of like the forums, you end up like on some BB board. That's not what we want. So what we ended up doing is creating shared microservices, which look like this. I scrubbed it a little so that you can't see all the secrets that we have in this company. So many secrets. And the first thing that we want to do is make sure that people don't get kicked out when they go from one application to the next. So session authentication, that was one of them. And then we have a style server that basically, this microservices, we hit it, we get some CSS, and we put that CSS in a place. And then the next thing is a shared component, which is a global navigation that we use on all of our apps that that basically plugs into this config service so that when you see a dropdown, you don't see something that you're not supposed to see. Oops. And of course, we have this router. So if you remember earlier, I said that we had a PHP MVC framework that does routing for us. We actually made our router a completely separate app than an Nginx server that's config-based and slightly faster. And this is the router that basically leads you to Trader Home. We hold your hand, all those things we sing to you. Anything that so the session server, the style server, nav, and config. I don't remember what the router is, but most of these are built on Node.js. So that's kind of cool. There's some similarities between the architectures of all of these shared services. So let's go back to it. Best of both worlds. Have your cake and eat it too. We got our shared services that allow us to unify the experience, and then we have we vetted new technologies that we will talk about, as Max will talk about. We started out actually with a completely new team. Like, okay, I've been here for 2 years or ish ish. What is time? Time passes, as Virginia Woolf once said. But we like each other, I think. And then, as Alejandro is going to talk about later, big processes, which allowed us to really actually keep it together very early on in the process. So processes like TDD, test-driven development, and doing things where we're putting infrastructure in place so that we don't trip later. I really love these guinea pigs. That's what we were for a little bit, because this new architecture, we kind of thought about doing it at the same time as Trader Home actually started as a team. So we were kind of running with it as it was happening. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was Meeting-Driven Development. If you've heard of BDD, TDD, there's also MDD, which was coined here, TM. And it sounds really bad, actually, but it turned out to be pretty good, especially early on when we were a small team and we didn't really know what each other's habits were technology-wise. So a lot of the decisions we ended up making towards the beginning of the team being together were done just in meetings, and that allowed us to get a bunch of buy-in from everyone on the team and solidify the processes that, as I said, Alejandro is going to talk about. And then we also had the challenge of technically just bringing it all together. So this is what our stack looks like. It's super basic. I made it in Photoshop. We have the client-side part of our application is built on a framework called EmberJS, which Max is our local evangelist of EmberJS. So he's going to have some things to say about that. We have a service smacking your lips, I see. We have a server-side. The server-side part of our application is in Node, which I'm going to mainly talk about, and the various APIs that are going to turn into this. Okay, you can ignore the blue parts right now. Just look at the orange parts. Oh, I guess the bottom is kind of orange from this perspective. But anyway, so the shared services are up there: style, session, and navigation. And in the Node part of our stack, we hook into those. And the session is like kind of what you would expect for authentication. But the style and navigation service is kind of interesting because that was more of a challenge. Basically, whenever you hit traderhome.com and you're making a request to get our index page, before we return the index page, it's not static, right? We call the navigation and style service, get some CSS, JavaScript, HTML, more CSS, and we inject it into the head of the page, and then we send it back with OK200 Super Saiyan. May or may not be true. I just wanted to put in a Dragon Ball Z reference, but that's how we end up serving and hooking into these shared services. Oh, so I really wanted to include an emoji too. So has anyone here ever tried to build something that depends on another thing that doesn't exist yet? Those people. Yeah, you. Okay, this is for you. I'm going to breeze through these tips, but that's basically what happened with us. We ended up needing to build these integration modules on the Node end before the actual services were done for style and navigation and session. So big tip, bootstrap what you need. We use the standard, so we use Express on the Node end, and we use that standard module for session management while, so distracted, for session management, and took it out basically whenever, what? Hello? Okay. We took it out when we had access to the session service. Am I coming in and out? Okay, cool. So yeah, we weren't afraid to throw away that code, which is awesome actually, because Alejandro built this awesome Express console session module that now any other team that is using Express and Node to hook into the session service can also use. So it's like, I made it, now I'm going to share it. It's like when you bring food, you bring it for everyone. And then the last thing is test-driven development, which is when we didn't have access to the services, we built out mocks, and we're still able to actually write the integration modules for them and then plug them in when the services were actually ready, and do obviously some adjustments based we didn't get to take advantage of all the awesome parts of every technology that we used. And that the type of integration that we had to do on the server end actually created pretty tight coupling between the front end and the back end, which makes me cry like that. So if you have some solutions, maybe you can come help us. I don't bite, but maybe Max bites. You can judge for yourself because he's going to come up here and talk about the technical part of our own stack right now. Is he? I'm just here. Cool.
Awesome.
Yay, Max!
It up or yay? Just leave this here just in case. Can I leave it here? Good. I get to drop the mic. Awesome. Best game. Anyone know what game this is from? Best game ever. So, assuming that I know how to use the clicker, and I do. Very simple. So, also, Yini, that's amazing. She has a cornucopia of knowledge, so much so that I think I've almost forgotten what I was going to talk to you guys about, but I'll figure it out as we go along. So, a brave new application. So we're going to talk a little bit about what it is in a little bit more detail and the components that we use. And in general, how you start building new things without pissing everybody off. I mean, it happens because basically if you're at a company that's of a sufficient size, people have a tendency to build frameworks and tools and things that'll allow them to do faster development, easier maintenance, scaffold things. You have like kind of a template. You go look at that one, just do it that way. It's a lot faster for a lot of bootstrapping and lets you like start things and make it a lot easier. But that comes with its own difficulties because technology moves pretty quick. If you guys aren't sure about that, it does. So it moves pretty quick and you don't want to get left behind. You know, I probably could have had like a Ferris Bueller thing here, but basically you don't want to get left behind. You want to be able to use new stuff when it comes out and it's better, or it's something that does the thing that you spent 2 years trying to bake yourself. And that's the kind of thing that happens, I think, at a lot of companies that have a large software presence like AppNexus. So the idea is to do new things in a new way. And, you know, sometimes you upset people a little bit at first. It's not always easy, but you sort of have to do it in a very diplomatic way. And you have to do it in a way that you know that the stability is going to be there. You know, the experience is going to be nice and unified. Everything is going to play nice. And, you know, you win that confidence and you get that buy-in. And then people trust that you can do new things. And that's like where it's at. That's the goal. So to give you sort of the TLDR, we've already seen a few different diagrams, but just a basic run through. Who here is familiar with EmberJS? Show of hands, people that are familiar with it or have used it. It's cool. I'm not an EmberJS evangelist. Try it, use it. Definitely try EmberJS. I don't know who said that. So EmberJS is fantastic, I think. It's a great client-side MVC framework, kind of. It's a model view controller plus routing. So basically that just means that there's a lot of stuff that you get for free. We'll talk a little bit more about that too, including Ember CLI, which is the preferred way of doing development for EmberJS right now. That gives you even more great things specifically about your development environment and your build tools. So all that stuff where it was like, yeah, we could figure out Grunt, or well, maybe we should use Gulp, or Slurp, or Slurpees, or 711JS, or whatever there else. You don't have to think about that. It's already there. Somebody figured out the problem, and they're a lot better at it than I am, so I'm going to trust them. So we also are using Node.js as the web server, as the API. It massages the data. Right now, so Node.js, for those of you who's familiar with Node, use Node. Okay, so definitely a lot of Node usage. So that's Node.js is a JavaScript runtime. We're currently on 10.3.6 right now, due for an upgrade, but we'll do that when we have a chance, aka when we're not working on slides. and why? Because JavaScript. That's why. Because we're JavaScript people. We like JavaScript. It's non-blocking. right? It's lightweight, and it's JavaScript. So there's a lot of other pieces that we talked about a little bit. Breakup stuff, microservices. And so one of the main things is we needed this subscription API. Talked about the concept of ownership. I'm a user in the system. I'm a trader. I've got like 10,000 items that I can see when I go into console. I am, like my boss told me, you're responsible for these 5. Like, do I have to look at all 10,000 every time I go in? No, you don't, because now you have the subscription API where I say, these are the 5 I care about. That's the whole idea behind it. It's a Fireglass service. Fireglass, which is actually a derivative of Java Play that we have. That's one of those in-house frameworks that helps us spool things up a little bit faster. And it's for us, by us, as in it's a product of Trader Home, but right now it's just a service. Anybody could use it. So if other people want to start including, are you subscribed to this in other parts of the application, they can do that. They can use our service. So the breakup services that we heard about, those are Node.js. I think the router too. And those are, the master CSS. Did we change the specific color of orange? We ordered new rugs. We have a new orange, new hex code. Is that going to be unified across all the device? Everything. It's that, the nav bar, this should be the same everywhere. You don't want to bounce around on Gmail and then have everything change, even though you're supposed to be in the same app. And the session service, right? Authentication. And that's for everyone's usage. In particular, us. We're kind of the first ones to just rely exclusively on everything from the beginning. And we have Core to thank for that. So if anyone here is from Core, thank you very much. If you're not and you watch the recording, still thank you. So you picked EmberJS and Node.js. And if you're like Nick Carter, you're wondering, why'd you do that? Why that? Why didn't you go with Ruby? Or why didn't you do it in Python? Python's fantastic. Python's cool too. So Ember, mostly because it's Ember, because it's amazing. But in reality, it does give us an enormous amount of stuff right out of the box. If you start up with an Ember application, you get things for free that take you weeks, if not longer, to build yourself, and they won't work right when you build them yourself anyways. So you shouldn't probably try to build all of it yourself, unless you're even more ambitious than Ember, which is an ambitious framework in itself. So some of the things that we get are data bindings, like your knockout or any of those. We also get computed properties, observers. There's a few others. There's services. Basically, you have the idea of these global services that can be used from any part of the application. For example, we have a login service that any place that needs to do a login can refer to. You have the idea of components. Is anyone here familiar with React? React.js people? So it's kind of along the same line as that. It's a little bit more strictly adhering to the idea of web components, but it mostly follows the same paradigm. You could nest the components. Dependency injection, should you need it, although if you need it too much, that's a bad sign, and plenty of other things. So we're using Ember CLI, which is really great, because right out of the box, it gives you file watching, test integration, CI tools. The whole build chain is ready for you. You type Ember build, get all those static assets. You don't have to worry about, well, did I concatenate everything right? Did I do this right? Did I do this right? You don't have to build it all yourself. A lot of it's provided for you. Helps a lot when you're creating a new application. And all that stuff can be tweaked later. It's using a build tool called Broccoli. Talk about it later if you're interested. And also Glimmer, which recently merged into the Canary of EmberJS. Those of you who are familiar with React know about sort of the virtual DOM and the kind of performance enhancements that you get when you don't re-render everything all the time, or you technically do, but you only have to worry about changing things that you know for a fact have changed in terms of data. And the Glimmer engine is about that, and that's going to be probably released pretty soon, which is really exciting. And if you're interested in talking about it, talk about it later. Why Node.js? First of all, why have a server side at all? You have all these other services, you have all these microservices, and you have all this stuff. Why do you need another specific server or piece sitting in between them? So the first reason is proxy. for some stuff. So instead of having cores enabled or the cross-origin resourcing enabled for all of these other services, and then maintaining cores, which is not something that a lot of people are very fond of, the idea is all of those things happen through the proxy. So the Node.js proxy is the one that's going to go and talk to all those other microservices. The Ember app now only has to talk to one thing. We know exactly where that is. It's easy in development, makes perfect sense in production, and that's sort of what works for us. But beyond that, we wanted it to be in JavaScript because we're a team of JavaScript developers. Yes, you have non-blocking I/O. That's handy sometimes. You know, it's just a feature of JavaScript. And it should also play really nice with our other breakup tech, which is also in Node. So there is a little bit of a, well, we're heading in this direction. It's probably going to work out in our favor if we sort of play nice. Frameworks. So we're using Express, as Yinyi mentioned. And I mean, Express is great, but when you compare something very opinionated like EmberJS with just raw Express, it's raw Express. It's very just like, you can kind of do whatever you want. It's not opinionated. It doesn't dictate any structure. And we've talked about a few different other frameworks, none of which we are currently using, but we're really interested in hearing if you guys are familiar with, for example, Sales or Action Hero or Happy or Koa or any of the others that sort of make claims to be better than raw Express. Not being decided about any of that. We have not implemented any of them, although some of them look a little bit attractive to us, and maybe we'll check them out in the near future. So here is a diagram that's kind of like a diagram we saw before, but this is just overall all the stuff that I already said. Client app, server and Node, subscription APIs, that Java Play service, shared services that are done by core, Node.js, legacy API, as you mentioned in Zend, PHP. These are the things that we consider, the middle row is basically our app. We're mostly talking about the orange here, right? So in general, this is how serving works. So when we actually serve the app, the idea is client makes a request to the Node.js server, which has an index file. The index file has already references to assets in Akamai. And what it does before it gives the index file back is it actually goes and makes all the calls to the shared services and prepends and adds things to the head and adds things above the rest of the body so that that navbar component shows up. We have the right styles, and even before that, we've confirmed that the user's logged in using the session service. If they're not, they go back to, you need to log in console. We can redirect you later. After that, index file comes back, assets resolve. So the assets resolve either from Akamai, because remember the whole Ember app is basically static at this point, as well as resolving from the shared services. So let's talk about, well, actually, to take a step back, there's two routes in the Ember app. The main, we haven't shown you the app yet, but in general, the crux of it is that you show up, you're at application route says, are you logged in? If you're logged in, go to the dashboard. The dashboard is the thing that actually contains the data that you really care about, which are the insertion orders, which are buckets of time-sensitive money. Yes, we can all say it together. So the buckets of time-sensitive money, those are the things that the trader really cares about. And so the dashboard is going to show the trader the ones that they actually care about. So here is the dashboard route in general. The idea is when you're at the dashboard route, the server goes and says, well, which ones are you actually subscribed to? So which insertion order IDs do you care about to begin with? Then we go use the legacy API to say, get all of the data for those insertion orders, get the reporting data that you were going to spend 2 hours digging around for, get whatever data that we can visualize for you better on the client app, compile it all, bring it back, and return it to the Ember app. And then that's basically becomes the insertion orders, which we use in the dashboard. So when we're going to subscribe or unsubscribe, as you could probably guess, we use the subscription API, and we just either do posts or deletes. It's mostly just a proxy at that point. But we need to have that data to know when you search and you figure things out, which ones you're already subscribed to, are you adding or removing, what can you actually do with this insertion order. And then when we're actually searching, And I don't even know why I included actual like payloads here. It's not really helpful. So when you're searching, you're going to, it's mostly search results are, there's a model, but it's really just make that AJAX call to the server app, which also uses the legacy API's search function. And then the search, the insertion orders that come back that pertain to the name or a campaign name or whatever we extrapolate it to, basically that comes back as your search results. So those are the ones that you can choose to add and remove from and all that stuff. And then in general, deployment, as I said before, so the Ember app is static assets. Beforehand, we just, or in a tool that we actually, so another in-house tool, if you guys have used Amazon Web Services, basically Maestro 3 is analogous to that. It does most of the same things. It's something that we use internally for spinning up instances of dev boxes. I want to play with Redis. I want to play with Mongo. I need a new box to put this stuff on to test something. That all can happen very easily through Maestro, and that's an in-house tool. It's also used to do a lot of deployments. So the idea is basically Maestro can go and push all those static assets into the cloud, Akamai, literally a cloud, and then it will also do deployments for the server app and say, go push those to all the instances of the server app that we have, and it's smart enough to know to roll from one to the next so that you always have one that's responding. That's really useful so that you don't have random downtime just because you're deploying. And for the most part, that is it. So there's a lot of stuff that we talked about so far, and there's a lot of things that are actually, I think, really valuable in terms of how do you coordinate that effort on a day-to-day basis, and some of the process and the tools that we actually use to get that done. And Alex is going to talk a little bit more about that right now. Thank you very much.
Flappy Bird. Flappy Bird. Flappy Bird.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alejandro, Alex, go by both, and I'm going to talk to you about our process and our tools. So I'm pretty sure you guys, with your own company, have your own processes, and the ones that we use. Well, actually, let me start here with something you guys are very familiar with. How many people have actually worked with a waterfall model? Okay, how many people have heard of the waterfall model? Okay, very useful, right? Yeah, we have communication, planning, modeling, construction, but it takes a long time, right? So one of the things that we definitely don't use waterfall model, we actually use Agile. And how many people have heard of Kanban? Okay, well, we do Kanban. The reason being because, as you guys know, communication tends to be like this. This is basically what the customer more or less explains his idea is going to be. And, he gets charged a roller coaster, but in the end, he really just wants a swing, right? So, Kanban. Why do we like Kanban? Well, Kanban, we like it because it basically becomes like a small waterfall. It's like a 1 to 2 week waterfall. So the way that we use it is that we actually start by doing planning. We do weekly planning. So we basically make sure that everybody, that we have a backlog of like at least 1 to 2 weeks so that we can actually have something to do. We also do stand-ups. We do this like 15 minutes a day, every day. And what it helps is basically keep developers busy. At the same time, make sure that we don't have any blockers so that nobody is blocked, right? So another thing we do is we do test-driven development, kind of like how Yanyi was actually telling you guys. And I'll talk a little bit about this later. We also do code reviews, which of course everybody loves code reviews. And I'll get into that as well because it's very useful. In the end, we all focus on getting stable releases. I'm pretty sure everybody would. So the first tool that I'm going to talk about is Mocha. And of course, not to be confused with the drink, because yeah, it's a drink, but it's also a tool. The nice thing about Mocha is that it's a testing framework that we use, and it works very well with Node and Ember. Like Max was explaining, we also integrated with Ember CLI, which is really nice because Ember CLI generates these tests for you. It won't write everything for you, but it will write the scaffold so that you can remind yourself to write the test. Another thing is that you can actually test all the components individually. This is very nice because you don't have to kind of like hook up the entire thing, make sure that it works. You can just test the components individually. So I'm going to get into a little bit of testing. Let's imagine that we have a cookie factory, and we're going to test the cookie machine, right? And we want to make sure that the cookie machine actually makes cookies that are between 2.8 inches to 3.2 inches. So basically, we write something like this in plain English. In order to test our cookie machine, I want to test the diameter of the cookie is within 2.8 and 3.2 inches. So we also use a pattern called the given when then pattern. It's basically given a condition, when an action happens, then we confirm the result. So we start with a background, when we're going to be testing, which is when the machine finishes doing the cookies, right? So given a cookie, we have our cookie scenario. When I measure the cookie, then the cookie should measure more than 2.8 inches, but no more than 3.2. So this is how it looks in code. We basically use Mocha to describe the test. In here, we're describing the cookie machine, and we make sure that we're testing it when the machine finishes making the cookie. And as well, just give it a specific detail there saying what we're testing, the cookie size, and it has to measure 2.8 inches and 3.2 inches. Basically, that's like our acceptance criteria. So then we use Chai, which is basically a library that works with Mocha that allows us to basically assert that we meet the condition. So in this case, we're using assert, making sure that the cookie size is above 2.8 and that it's below 3.2. So if any of those two tests actually fail, then our entire test fails. So it's pretty cool, right? So let's talk a little bit about test-driven development. The nice thing about test-driven development is that it makes sure that the tests serve as examples for other developers. So when you're developing, you're not writing documentation at the same time. So you basically have the tests that helps serve as examples. The other thing is that some of the tests might work for unit testing, not all of them, but they're made for developers by developers. So we're all talking the same language. It also helps you think about the entire problem. When you start developing without TDD, you focus basically on a specific task. You're doing something, but you don't focus on the entire problem. So this actually gets you thinking more about the entire problem before you tackle individual parts of it. Another nice thing about is that it focuses you on actually writing agile, because you basically write enough code that it'll basically just be making sure that the test runs. Just so enough code just to make the test work. And another thing is that it gives you the ability to refactor with confidence, because before you actually refactor, you run your tests, you make sure that they pass, and after you finish refactoring, you run your test again and make sure that they pass. If they fail, you're doing something wrong. Another thing is that it'll avoid doing the will, should, might, write tests, right? Which start with, oh yeah, I will write tests. Oh yeah, I should write tests. You know what, I might write a test. End up being, yeah, no, I didn't write a test. So another tool that we use is Stash. It's actually a pretty cool software. It basically helps us with peer code reviews. It's really, really nice because it helps keep your coding standards pretty high. Making sure that what you're writing makes actually sense to somebody else. It also helps, it's always nice to have another sets of eyes right there looking at your code, so that the code that you write actually makes sense to somebody else and not have something like this. And of course, when you run your tests, they work perfectly on your computer, but if you run them on a different computer and they don't work, making sure that those tests run. And another thing is it helps you write spaces before curly braces, which is something I'm reminded of every single day. So I know it kind of feels like this, like you're running through an aisle with all the developers with clubs and knives. But trust me, it's actually worth it in the end, because when you are actually doing refactoring, as you're doing Agile, your code changes all the time. It's actually really good because you run those tests, make sure they pass, and everybody's happy. So now let's talk a little bit about Git Flow. As you know, we always have a master branch, but in our case, we don't actually use the master branch. We only develop in what we call the develop branch. So all developers create a new feature and they branch off develop. They create their feature, make any changes that they want to do, as well not blocking develop. So if other developers are pushing to develop, it doesn't affect you. And the other nice thing about it is that now it works with Stash. It's all integrated. So you do a pull request in Stash. And it gets basically reviewed by the rest of the team, making sure that your code is there, that it works, run those tests. And once you're ready, you get approval, and you merge it back into develop. So after that, we wait until we have enough features that are actually enough to make a stable release. So we create a release. Once we create a release, you have to modify the code sometimes to get it to work with production. So you'll do the release without blocking the development branch. So you can continue having developers work on the development with the next release, but in reality, you have a release that's stable and it's ready for deployment. Once it's ready for deployment, we basically push that to master. We push it to develop so that develop reflects the changes that you've made in the release, as well in master, where you have your deploy. So this works the same way for hotfixes, where they get actually pushed to master in both the development. So let's go back to what Alex was saying. Do you guys remember how long it took Laura to do those calculations with all Excel? So with all that technology that we talked about, I'm going to show you what we've accomplished. This is Trader Home. And of course, as you guys know, each card represents a bucket of time-sensitive money. So here I can see performance trends, and I can see how yesterday compares to today. I can basically aggregate each return over investment, or ROI, for each of my bucket of time-sensitive money. And most importantly, I don't have to spend 2 hours to actually do these calculations. And you get a really nice visual representation of them. So that's what we do.